Welcome to another episode of the Closers Club. Today, I'm joined by property manager Casey Howe. Casey, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on, man. So, Casey, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for a living.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Casey Howe, owner and principal of Howzer Property Management. We manage about just under 1,000 units in the South Shore and eastern side of Bristol County, and mostly focused on multi-unit investors and helping them manage their assets.
Love it, man. 1,000 units, that's a lot, man. How long did it take you to build the portfolio to that size?
Yeah, we've been in business just over 5 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. It's a good journey, man. We'll learn more about that today.
Yeah.
So how'd you kind of end up in this region? Were you born and raised in Boston? And how'd you land in the real estate industry, Casey? I know you've got an interesting story, so I definitely appreciate you sharing it.
It's kind of a weird story. So, historically, I was born in Syracuse, New York. I've lived in probably, 8 cities since then. Just moved around. I was always in software sales, tech sales, things like that. And a few years ago, 5 years ago, my company I was currently working for at the time got another round of funding, and it was an opportunity for me to kind of look at things fresh. And I decided to leave that world of tech sales, and we moved back to my wife and I moved back to Cape Cod, actually, Falmouth, Cape Cod, and I just looked at different concepts. Quite frankly, I didn't come from a background in real estate. I wasn't real passionate about like fixing toilets at night or anything like that. I just sort of looked at different concepts. And the thing I liked about property management was I thought there was a need for it, specifically in the South Shore. There were some good companies in Boston, but there just weren't a lot of great companies out there in the South Shore that I could find. And so I looked at the concept and, started the company, and we've been lucky to do pretty well since then.
I love the fact that you shared that, Casey, because a lot of people kind of had a dream to be in real estate or a goal to be in real estate, especially in our audience. But there are also people out there who kind of stumbled into it. And sounds like you took a very analytical approach to how you decided to jump into the industry. Tell us a little bit about that, Casey. Like, through that process, were there other industries that kind of stood out to you? Did you have other ideas? Because coming from tech sales and software and jumping into real estate, that's a totally different leap, right? In a totally different space. So like, talk a little bit about your process and evaluating how you're going to make that next move.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it was, I wouldn't say I stumbled into it. It was fairly, premeditated. So, what I did is I realized I think my strengths were people, because software sales, I was really in leadership roles, anything from, 10 people up to 300 people at one point.
Wow.
Overseeing a large sales group. And I was good at working with people. I love technology, and I liked process. I liked putting good process into place. And so I think what I found quickly by researching, the property management business was the good companies out there are hiring great people. They're leveraging process and technology to be more efficient and do a great job. And so that's sort of what I evaluated. And then I just, I like the recurring revenue nature of it. It's a fairly consistent revenue in that, you're collecting rent each month, you're doing some maintenance and things like that, but each month you've got rent coming in, and that's it's a stable income source.
Love that, man. Love it. So in your journey and kind of looking at real estate, it sounds like it was the recurring revenue as one of the pillars, and then the need. And then something you saw in your region that was lacking. It
was interesting, right? Because I actually picked up the phone and called a bunch of management companies. I obviously won't name them, but I didn't get calls back. People didn't answer the phone.
Wow.
You couldn't. Their websites looked like they were designed in the 80s, and I think there are some good ones out there, to be sure. There are certainly some good ones out there, but it was harder to find than I would have thought, given all the multifamily housing that we have here. And so I saw, a market opportunity, and, it's just worked out real well for us.
Nice, man. So you said you manage 1,000 units. What does that look like on a typical day? Because, like, I hear that, Casey, right? And I dabbled in property management, and, me and my partner, when I was in my 20s, we stumbled into it. It wasn't something we were looking for. We had about 70 units, and I think one of the issues was we didn't plan for managing it. We didn't have a team. It was really just kind of, all right, we had this client that bought this. Let's add that to the portfolio. And it became very challenging. So what does it look like to efficiently run 1,000 units and kind of at scale be able to deliver great service?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think, what we had to figure out around 300 units was how would we structure our staff so that if someone came to us the next day and said, I have 300 more units, how could we scale that right then? And it was tough to figure out. There are different thoughts out there of the best way to structure a management company. There's portfolio-based management where you've got one person in charge of a subset of units and they're responsible for everything. There are some advantages and disadvantages there. There's more like of a pod structure. There's a departmental structure. We've settled on what I'd refer to as like a pod-based structure. And what that means is, we've got, it's sort of a cross between departmental where people have specialties and they do certain things and they become efficient and good at doing those things because it's departmental. But we've also got ownership where, if we've got a client that wants to reach out to someone, they don't have to work with, 3 different people to get an answer. And so that's worked well for us.
Excellent. How about the maintenance side? Because that's really, I think that what challenged us the most was having reliable maintenance people who could service all of the calls that we would get. And kind of, I guess, a piggyback question on that. Do you guys have like a process where you onboard a client where they have to have the property at a certain condition, or there's like a checklist where the property has to, have these things done before you take it on? So kind of a 2-part question on the maintenance and kind of the starting point. Yeah,
for sure. So when we started, the most efficient, when I started, I should say, I started with all 1099 contractors. So we'd find plumbers and we'd find handymen and people that were responsible for making their own schedules and doing their own work, and they'd bill us and we bill the client. And that was an effective way, I think, for us to scale. But, I made the determination several years ago that we had to bring at least the handyman and sort of maintenance side of our house, in-house. And so, by doing that provided a few things. One, better pricing for our clients. And through economies of scale, right? Because if we've got him, fixing a light bulb here, he can go fix a drain next door, and he's in the same place. So better pricing, better control, right? Because they work for us, and thirdly, so it's better pricing, better control, and then really just revenue opportunity. I mean, we've built it in a way where we can have in-house maintenance, we can make money on it, and we can save customers money. So it's sort of a win all around.
Nice, Casey. And what regions are you in now? You started in the South Shore.
Yep.
Are the majority of your contracts there? Are you guys, multi-state? Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, we're not multi-state yet. We've toyed around with the idea of getting into New Hampshire or Rhode Island. There's different laws, different regulations, and so we've just decided to stay primarily in the South Shore. Bristol County we're in, and then we've expanded most recently with a new office in Mashpee.
Nice.
On Cape Cod as well.
Nice. And as far as minimum, I guess, portfolio size that you guys would take on, like if I have a borrower who has a single family they finished and they want to Airbnb it, is that something you guys would look at? Do you guys have a minimum number of units or a certain type of exit that you would work with?
It's a good question. So generally, we don't do vacation rentals. It's not to say we never will. We don't do the short-term thing. It's just a different business, and it would be tough to be really good at both. Generally, you see management companies, as you're probably aware, focus on one or the other, and we've just decided to focus on long-term or year-round rentals. In terms of size, we don't really have a minimum. We don't do a lot of single-family. The single-family that we do is usually a multifamily owner that also owns a single-family, and we're happy to help out with that. But primarily, when you see the triple-deckers, that's our wheelhouse. We do a lot of that. We do a lot of a few 20 and 30-unit buildings, and we're starting to build a pipeline for larger projects and 50, 100-unit buildings. We want to get into that space, and I think we do well at it.
Great. And also, how about condos? Do you guys do condo management as well?
We don't do condo management. It's, if there's a tenant in the unit, that's what we focus on.
Okay.
We find great tenants. I think that's a big differentiator for us. Whether it's us or any management company, when a management company goes out and finds a tenant, they have a vested interest in finding a good tenant because they're the one that's going to have to manage that tenant.
Well said. Yeah. I'm asking these questions, Casey. I want you to know this isn't an effort to let the folks know exactly what you do so that if folks are looking for property management, we'll get into that later on, they kind of know where your service begins and ends relative to their business and their model. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing and being transparent about that.
Yep.
As far as the challenges that come, day in and day out, every business, it looks great on the surface. You have 1,000 units, some people here, he's rich, right? At the end of the day, people don't understand the level of work and commitment that you have to put in as a successful entrepreneur to win out here, right?
Yep.
And to scale and to continue to make sure you keep your success growing.
Yep.
So what would you say are some of the biggest challenges you face in the 5-year period you've been in the game, and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, so with the biggest thing, property management is a very sort of up and down or cyclical type thing. The first week of the month, there's lots of rent to be collected. The summer might be busier than the winter in terms of rentals. And so one of the challenges is figuring out how to not be overstaffed or understaffed. And so being nimble in terms of how you assign your resources is really important, or your P&L is not going to look good, or you're going to provide a poor service. So that's the first one. The other things they're challenges, but they're also opportunities for us. And so when I look at, managing vacancies, right? I mean, obviously it's a challenge it should be seen as a challenge and an opportunity to reduce the vacancy rate for one of our clients' portfolios. And I think, by looking at it as that challenge and focusing on, vacancies, focusing on finding really good tenants, and focusing on, managing maintenance, in a cost-effective manner. Those things have to be front of mind all the time. And I think we've done a pretty good job at overcoming those two.
Excellent, man. I think you have as well. To go from 0 to 1,000 in 5 years, man, says a lot. The proof's in the pudding.
Appreciate that.
No, man, it's trust me, I recognize it, man. At my little 70, my head was spinning, so I give you a lot of credit for that. Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
As far as like your day-to-day, at where you're at in the business now, Casey, what do you spend the most time on as kind of the leader and head of this portfolio now? Is it kind of managing the day-to-day processes? Is it your focus is primarily on growing the business? Because I always ask business leaders this question primarily, and I tell my team this all the time. I tell them the marketing is the business ultimately once you kind of set up the systems, but there's obviously different degrees of involvement that we have to make relative to how our business is structured. So kind of where do you spend most of your time these days?
Yeah, I mean, business development's a big one. That's my background. I enjoy meeting with clients and figuring out how to help them either grow their portfolio or help, find new clients. That's probably most of my time. Aside from that, it's I've got a passion for technology and process. So really, syncing with the team and just making sure that we're enabling them with whatever technology that we need to so they can be more effective. And then I think, the third, and this was sort of an unplanned area, is managing risk. Right? I mean, it's insurance and just these little, all these things pop up and you spend more time on it than you thought you would before you started the business.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that because, on the lending side, when we underwrite loans and kind of evaluate situations, we're always underwriting for the downside, right?
Yep.
And I think that's something people don't really talk about when it comes to business. It's the liability piece that is real and that could literally take all the years of work and energy and effort and, throw it away in a moment's notice if you don't have the right protocols in place for the risk.
That's right. And, I tell my team, not every day, but all the time that, the bigger we get, the more we have to protect. If you're at 10 doors and you lose your whole business, you could just start over and where you were about a month ago. But, we're at a point now where we can't, we've got a lot to protect.
Absolutely. Great, man. So another question kind of on a side note, you touched on this a little bit earlier, but especially at the beginning of your journey, do you believe that all property managers are created equal, right? Like people think property managers are interchangeable because it's not something that you think of as a specialty service. It's like, I have a property, they'll collect the rent and kind of handle the maintenance. But, I've seen what it looks like to work with a great one and a mediocre one and a terrible one. And so definitely want to get your thoughts on, just the industry as a whole and really separates you guys in your opinion.
Yeah. So, I'd say a couple things. The first is that Massachusetts is one of just several states in the country that don't require a property manager as licensed. And the reason I say that is because if there's no licensing requirement, there has to be something else that says this person is different than anyone else who just says that they're a property manager. And so there's really two organizations out there that look at that. One is NARPM, the National Association of, Residential Property Managers. And the other is IREM, the Institute of Real Estate Management. Both of those are great organizations. And both of them have an accreditation program where they look at things like experience. They look at things like there's some ethics requirements that you need to pass. And I would just, I think the first thing I would recommend to anyone looking for a property manager is just make sure they're accredited by someone. a third party should say this person has the experience, or these people have the experience to manage your property and do it well. But I'd love to say that we've come out and we're just absolutely the world's best management company. I don't think that's the case. I think we're pretty darn good, but I think primarily there is a gap in the market. Once you get outside of like Boston, the city, there's a gap in the market in terms of people and companies that just do it well, and do it well every time. And so that we focused on just not reinventing the wheel, but making the wheel better. Yeah,
no, that's a great point. And I didn't realize that Massachusetts is one of the few states that don't require property management license. That's pretty interesting to me.
It's crazy, right? Yeah. Most other states, you have to be a broker of record and all that.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense. And from some of the stuff I've seen over there, because I've seen some crazy scenarios. I'm like, how is this person managing someone's property? Even when, I was actively an agent out there and walking into a situation where, the manager was, just obviously walking us through, but had no care for some of the, terrible conditions, right. Faucets leaking, broken, running,
right.
You can see mice and rodents scurrying around the house, like crazy stuff like that, man.
It's pretty
wild.
Crazy. And in our line of work, you have to be willing to fire a client. And we've done that several times, right? I mean, if they're not willing to keep it, keep the place or invest what they need to at least make it safe and habitable and healthy, we can't work with them. But the other thing I'll say is, Massachusetts is an interesting state because it's got on the East Coast with the Cape, property management means different things to different people. And so if you ask somebody what a property manager is, like where I live out on Cape Cod, they picture the person that kind of stops by in the winter and turns the faucets off and does that. They don't necessarily know that it's someone that collects the rent and mitigates risks and works with the attorney for evictions if need be, and it does the financials at the end of the year and all that stuff. And so I think that's part of the reason here why they don't require the name property manager or property management company be licensed, because there are lots of that type of property manager, more like the maintenance thing that are especially out in the vacation areas where, they don't necessarily, they may not necessarily need a license, but that's not what we do.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Makes sense, man. Appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears a little bit here. So in kind of looking at the entrepreneurial world and kind of what's trending and what I hear from a lot, especially younger entrepreneurs who are not as experienced, Casey, but entering the market and having philosophies and ideas about what it means to be an entrepreneur and versus actually doing it. There's a lot of talk about the 4-hour work week, right? People really promote that. There's a book about it. And I wanted to get your thoughts and opinions on, do you believe that entrepreneurs can be efficient and grow a business to the scale you've grown working 4 hours a week? Is that realistic, or is that something that can be achieved after you've grown the business? I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I mean, I certainly don't work a 4-hour week, but I don't work an 80-hour week either, right? And I think a lot of people have this idea when they think of a property management company or a property manager, it's somebody running around with everything's crazy, bells are going off, and
right.
That's not how I've built our company. We've got good processes, we've got good people, we're staffed appropriately. We pay some of the top rates for each staff member's position. They're probably in the top quartile for what they should be for what they do, and nobody's working. I think everyone's working a 40-hour week. I think sometimes they're working a 50, and sometimes they're working a 30. But we're working like a normal work week, and that's the culture I've tried to build. That's who I want to be. I don't really have a lot of interest in working a 4-hour week now. Quite frankly, I enjoy being in the business and growing it and working with the team and things like that. But I think the concept behind it of having the systems in place and having the people in place, documenting processes and things like that, that's going to make your company better anyways. And so I think taking some of that from the 4-hour work week and implementing it is still a really good idea. But I don't see me working a 4-hour week for some period of time.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you sharing it, because I think while some people, it sounds salacious and it's a sexy concept, like, oh yeah, 4 hours and I'm a millionaire. In reality, nothing worthwhile is achieved, easily. It takes work.
Right.
And I think fundamentally, especially for the younger entrepreneurs, they really need to accept the fact that you might have to work 80 hours a week to get it started and get it going. And again, the seasons to it, but I like the fact that you pointed it out that you really strive to be efficient, right? You try to leverage your team to the best of their strengths. You try to look for areas where you can be more efficient, to use your time to the best of your ability and create balance, right? I think it's really about balance versus, 4 hours versus 80. It's somewhere in the middle where most entrepreneurs lie, at the end of the day.
I think that's right. Right. And I think that fresh employees and happy employees are more productive employees. And so we do things like unlimited time off. No one's abused it. If someone's abusing it and they're not getting their job done, it's probably not a good fit, but people don't abuse it. And, I try to take time off too. There's Saturdays I go into work because there's work to be done. And then there's Fridays I take off, in the afternoon. I think that's important to have that good balance.
Well said. Yeah, no, when you mentioned, people's image of a property manager, right? What we perceive property managers to look like, you don't fit that mold, man. I liken it to Fix It Felix. You know who that is?
Yeah.
Well, the Wreck-It Ralph movie.
Oh, yeah.
He's the character. The bell's always going on.
Yeah.
He's running around fixing everything as Ralph is messing it up.
Yeah. My daughters love that.
Oh, my kids too, man. Yeah. So, but when you said that, it triggered that idea because I think most people out there, that's what we kind of envision, the guy with 100 keys on his waist, and he's running around all day just fixing problems and fixing toilets and everything else, man. But it's evolved, man. I haven't seen you with the tool belt once since we know each other. So
we don't even use keys. We have all coded locks on our units.
I love it, man. Yeah. Bringing the tech industry,
right.
to the property management world.
That's right. I think good management companies they should be such that if you're an investor that wants to be completely hands off, you can get a report once a month that says expenses and revenue collected and everything else. And that's it. And we want to, if there are owners and clients that we have that want to be more hands-on than that, and we're happy to work with them too, but we want to be a resource for clients where we're almost serving as the landlord, doing everything for them.
Nice.
Yeah.
So every time we meet Casey, I've talked to you many times over the last year or so here, and you've always got a ton of energy. You're always super pumped and motivated. Where do you think that comes from? I always ask my guests, like, especially the ones who I know are out here grinding like yourself, like, where does that motivation come from? What drives you?
Yeah, I have ADD first off, but I have.
You leveraged it to your strength, man.
That's part of it. No, in all seriousness, I think, for whatever reason, everything, I've been in these different leadership roles throughout my career. And, part of that is not just being, as a sales leader, for example, on a leadership team, you're not just responsible for sales, you're responsible for your leadership team as well. And what I mean by that is you learn a lot about marketing because the marketing person's in that same meeting. You learn about finance because that person's in that meeting. And what I'm getting to is that all of those experiences of working with really smart leaders in various parts of the business has given me the experience and desire to run a really good business. And, if you ask my leadership team, at least at Howzer Property Management, what is Casey's vision for the company? They'll tell you he just wants to build a really good business. And the fact that we're in property management is sort of secondary to that. We in order to build a good business, we need to be really good at managing properties. I understand that, but I think my passion is to build a great business.
And it shows, man. As you're speaking, Casey, I'm hearing the words a passion for greatness, right? Like at the end of the day, like you want to deliver, like you said, a great company. It's not about the industry. It's about doing everything to ensure the experience of your customers is as good as you can make it. And you consistently are building on that, correct?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. A lot of our business comes from referrals and existing clients expanding and things like that. We work for our client, right? I mean, we've got to make them happy. We've got to do what's good for them. And I think most good management companies out there want to do that.
Absolutely. Cool, man. So what habits would you say, Casey, really provide you with consistent energy, the consistent mindset, and really empower you to continue to be successful? Do you have any daily routines or habits you follow to ensure that you stay on track?
Yeah, a daily habit, I try to get up, and this is a newer one, but I'm really enjoying it. I try to get up and do either a walk or a run. I kind of alternate right on the beach, looking at the sun. Get bright sun early in the morning. It's supposed to help your sleep. There's a lot of benefits to that. I've been enjoying that. That's kind of new. But the biggest one I would say, and I worked with a coach, a business coach and life coach a couple years ago, and the biggest habit he instilled in me was to review yourself every week. And so I sit down, and once a week. It happens to be Sunday mornings for me, and I look at 8 areas of my life, things like, finances and family and relationships and work, of course, and other things, and just think to myself, how am I performing in each of these areas? And throughout the week, what I do is every single day I capture little points of progress. So when I leave here, I'll capture, did this podcast. And then as I get to the end of the week, I look at all the captures that I have and I say, wow, this was a pretty good week, right? And if you have a bad week, you can look back at last week and say, wow, I did all these little things last week. And then every quarter, I sort of combine all the sort of top nuggets from each week, and I compile that, and I literally have all this in a binder that I can look at any time, and that keeps me really motivated.
I love that, man. You're the first person I heard really be able to define a way to measure their personal development, right? In a reflective way, in a consistent way, and in a way that I think really supports the reality of you're not always going to be, your best, but, you can see the incremental growth over time. You kind of, the chart kind of moves up and down, but ultimately the trajectory is going up.
That's
right. So I really appreciate you sharing that, man.
Awesome.
Wow, that's powerful.
It's helpful, and that came from a coach. So I love to say it was my idea, but it's been a game changer.
Absolutely. Dropping gems, man.
Yes,
that's
right.
You're the first one, man, to bring something like that to the show. So that's great.
Stuff.
Nice. As far as Casey, who you are outside of real estate, outside of business, any hidden talents, hobbies, or anything very few people know about you that you're willing to share?
Let's see. I got engaged at a McDonald's parking lot.
Really? How did that go down?
True story. Listen, so I went to my office, I picked up the ring, and we're driving out to the Cape, and I was going to do it in my wife's parents' driveway, but I got so nervous. I'm like, can you just go into McDonald's and get 2 Diet Cokes? I got so nervous, and I'm like, she's walking out and just handed some lady my phone and said, could you just please record this? I need to get this done. It was burning a hole in my pocket. So my wife always tells people I got engaged in McDonald's parking lot.
I love that story, man. That's hilarious. Great memories, I'm sure.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you couldn't wait. You're like, I got to get this over with, man. That's it.
It's like an hour and 10 from Boston, hour and a half from Boston. I couldn't
halfway there, all right, get out. Let's go to McDonald's, man.
That's right. Exit 5.
Wow, man. And you got it recorded as well.
I got it recorded.
Great. Yeah, man. That's great memory there.
Oh, yeah.
Great memory, man. Yep. From humble beginnings, man.
Yeah.
Yep. To making moves.
That's right.
Yep. Cool. So, Casey, I really want to recognize you for your commitment to your self-development, your commitment to your business, and really just, in the short time I've known you, I see you're someone who just brings tremendous value anywhere you go. And I really want to recognize you for that. And thank you for coming on the show. And additionally, how can people best connect with you relative to their property management needs? You're growing your company. You're primarily based here in New England. But let us know how folks can connect with you to really help continue to help you grow as you're out here, doing exceptional work.
Yeah. Well, hey, I appreciate that first off. And I love the energy you bring to the table every day. And I'm really happy to be on your show here. I would say, if you want to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn, Casey Howe, Howe. And then also, my company website is Howzer, that's Howzer, propertymanagement.com. It's a long one. I don't know. I wish I thought of a shorter one, but I didn't. But HowzerPropertyManagement.com, and our phone number's on there, but we'd love to help in any way we can.
Excellent. Reach out to him, guys. This is Casey Howe, one of the best in the game. If you need property management, you heard about him here first. And Casey, thanks again for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. Until next time.
All right.
That's a wrap.